Welcome to the Brew Crew Review Podcast, the show by fans for fans of your Milwaukee Brewers.
All right, Brewer fans, welcome to the Brew Crew Review Podcast. Pitchers and catchers are reporting today for the Milwaukee Brewers, and we've got myself, Craig, and co-host Vince here today. How's it going, Vincers?
Hey, going great, man. How are you?
Doing all right. Well, of course, been staring out the window all winter, waiting for baseball to come back, and got a huge grin on my face because of the fact that it's back, and I'm pretty excited about it. So, yeah, that means there'll be baseball coming up here in some fashion, at least baseball news or baseball box scores coming up real soon for every single day for about, 8 or 9 months. So that'll be fun stuff. Yeah, so basically there's some big news to start off the podcast. I don't know if you're ready for this, Vince. But the Brewers have signed a free agent.
Hey, how about it?
So
yeah, that's great.
The Brewers went on a little bit of a spending spree here with Mark Antoniocio's wallet, and they have spent $1 million to bring in swingman, left-handed reliever Tyler Alexander, formerly of the Tampa Bay Rays and the Detroit Tigers. What are your thoughts?
I haven't thought that much about it, to be totally frank. It's great. I'm glad we finally signed. It's our first major league free agent signing, or I should say our first signing of a free agent that was a major leaguer last season. I think we picked up another reliever who pitched in Japan last year. The numbers, in all seriousness, the numbers on Alexander are not that great. Interns are handing me some paperwork here right now, of course, very late, but he posted a 5.10 ERA last year in Tampa, pitching in 23 games. He did make 9 starts, so I guess that he's, versatile where he can both start or come out of the bullpen. Hasn't posted an ERA under 4 since 2021, which he posted a 3.81 ERA that year. Again, both being a starter and a reliever in Detroit. But overall numbers on Alexander, 4.55 ERA, 17-28 record overall for those who still look at wins and losses, and 449 innings of work at this point, spread out over 6 seasons. So the numbers aren't great. That being said, I think the pitching depth is always important. Yesterday pitchers and catchers started to report, and we've already got news that DL Hall is out for 2 to 3 weeks, which is probably going to end up being a month, just knowing how the team treats pitchers' injuries, especially in spring training. Number 2, I think that lefties are, good to just add to the system and to the depth, especially again with Hall's injury. And number 3, I think that the Brewers have shown a track record in the past of being able to get guys on track using the Brewers pitching lab. They have taken a flyer on some guys with kind of a similar pedigree to Alexander. And I think that, if any team can quote unquote fix guys, it's been the Brewers. So we'll see what happens for $1 million. I know that is $1 million more than we've spent again on any other major league free agent this offseason. But I would say that that's a reasonable amount of money to take a flyer on a left-handed, reliever, or a guy who could even step into the rotation if need be, because a lot of those kind of back end of the rotation guys have not been figured out yet. Again, the DL Halls, Ashby, others who are kind of vying for that 5th spot in the rotation haven't necessarily kind of fleshed themselves out. And certainly we're going to need, pitchers throughout the year as guys get hurt. And we mentioned it before on the podcast, but last year I think that Wade Miley was supposed to be our number 2 or 3 starter. And he pitched all of 3 games for us or something like that after injuries hit. And obviously a lot of things still up in the air with Brandon Woodruff's injury as well. So.
Yeah, that's some good assessment of that, Vince. Appreciate that. I will say that for all the Brewer fans who are kind of holding with bated breath whether or not the Brewers would fill their third base hole or their apparent third base hole with kind of the only big free agents out there, and Alex Bregman from, of course, formerly of the Astros, your neck of the woods, Vince. Unfortunately, this is what just happened was equivalent of, like, you taking your daughter to the mall or whatnot, and her begging you for the big dollhouse that costs several $100s, and instead you placate her by giving her a quarter and saying, "Go get yourself a nice trinket out of the bubblegum machine." So that's my assessment on Tyler Alexander. No offense to the guy, but I mean, so um, Tyler Alexander, he's a left-hander. He's actually been one of the more valuable swingmen in the league. In my opinion, he didn't have a great numbers last year. I get it though, but he has some experience starting. He has some experience relieving, and he's really good for that role where if you need him in a spot start, he can fill some innings. He also in blowouts, which hopefully we don't have any of those. And I feel like last year we had very little blowouts that we were on either end of actually, um, but yeah, like he's good to just fill innings or whatnot. But the Rays did, I think, successfully use him at times as like to follow openers or whatnot and fill in for like three
Mhm.
or four good innings. So he was valuable in that role. I will say, as a little side footnote, he does actually hold the major league record for most strikeouts in a row by a reliever, which he did in the pandemic year of 2020 as a member of the Detroit Tigers. He struck out 9 consecutive Cincinnati Reds in relief, which is the
Wow.
record the major record for major league record for a reliever. The actual major league record for any pitcher is 10. I believe it's Randy Johnson and Tom Seaver might own that record. Well, anyway, it's pretty phenomenal that he's got a major league record under his belt. But I mean, he has a very,
I did not realize that. That is dynamic research from our interns, Craig. That is outstanding. That is very good research. I did not know that.
yeah, no. LaRasia got that, one of Scott's interns, and yeah, she's not gonna get fired this week. That's excellent information she dug up here at the last minute, so I appreciate that. Being able to share that with our listeners. Um, Getting back to so again, Tyler, and again with the Hall injury news, it is a major league contract, only $1 million. It really is a bargain bin type of trinket to add to your roster. And again, as a lefty, I'm kind of a fan of it. I've actually liked the guy. I don't think that if he was, our number fifth starter going this year, I wouldn't be too happy. But the fact that he can fill in when needed is a nice experience. And he's 30 years old, I believe, and I think he's a nice addition to the ball club for several reasons. So welcome Tyler Alexander to the Milwaukee Brewers. Going back to the fans that are disappointed in not signing Alex Bregman, a couple of thoughts on that. Number one, you weren't really seriously thinking we were going to sign him, did you? Number two, I feel that it helps the Brewers in a number of ways. Actually, the fact that he signed the deal they did with the Red Sox. Number one, it prevented the Brewers from spending $40 million on 3 years of a player that I believe is a little bit overrated for that price tag. So in some ways, but it helped us by not actually making that move, in my opinion. Number two, it blocked the Chicago Cubs. The Chicago Cubs did not sign him, so they did not improve their ball club by signing Alex Bregman, which would have been kind of a dent on us. So that's good news. Good news number three is because of that deal, him going to the Red Sox, I believe that this really blocks the St. Louis Cardinals, another division rival, from being able to move on from Nolan Arenado. And not that there's other teams that he might move to. I know that the Tigers and Blue Jays are possibly kind of waiting in the wings, but I have a feeling that that deal might not happen. He's going to be stuck on the Cardinals, and I think that'll impede their reload slash rebuild that they were having, or reset, whatever you want to call it, for this year. And I really feel that it's damaged their entire offseason. And I feel like they've had a pretty poor offseason overall, and most baseball people have thought that. So as a division rival who have always been overachievers, I'm very happy with that news. So I think that Bregman signing in has a silver lining for the Milwaukee Brewers, and the fact that it brings all those positives.
Would you have ever thought a couple of years ago that you'd be saying, "Oh, it's really good that the Cardinals still have Arenado, like that they're quote unquote stuck with Arenado"? I certainly would not have, because I've always loved Nolan Arenado and wanted him as a Brewer actually for many years. So it's kind of funny to say that, but I don't disagree with you either. I do think that the Cardinals have had a really weird, poor offseason. I mean, they haven't really done much to improve their team. I don't think if they've done anything to improve their team, quite frankly. And it's a very weird spot for the Cardinals to be in, but it's a good position for the Brewers to see their division rival kind of get stuck like that. So I agree. I think that listen, Bregman is really a good ball player. I really liked watching him on a daily basis down here in Houston, seeing what he brings to the table for a team. All that being said, I don't think that he's worth the price tag that Boston just paid for him. That is a hefty price tag to get the back end of Bregman's career. I would have loved the Brewers to bring him in at half that for 2 years, maybe 3 years, but I don't think that was obviously in the cards. And again, I think that Bregman makes the Red Sox better for next year for sure. But again, that price tag is that's a very high price tag to pay for somebody, who's on the backside of his career at this point.
And he does have an opt out, I believe, after both of the next 2 seasons. And most likely, if he has, how I think the Red Sox were able or wanting to, or able, willing to do that deal is the fact that they think he'll have a good year. By the way, they are going to play him at second base instead of third base because their other star Devers will not move off third base apparently. And so they're going to actually, they've announced they're going to play him as second base, which kind of blocks Christian Campbell, one of their top five prospects in all baseball, from entering the league probably this year. But I believe that they feel he's going to have a good year for them and then opt out next
Which
year.
seems weird. I mean, he won a Gold Glove last year, Craig. I don't mean to interrupt, but I mean, the guy won a Gold Glove at third base last year. Seems
yeah,
weird.
no, well, maybe things will shake out different ways, but that's what they've already announced. So we'll see. Maybe they'll talk Rafael Devers into DHing instead. But they also are stuck with was it Yoshida or whatever, the Japanese guy on a bad contract, where nowhere to play him either. So I mean, they've I guess it's nice. Those are good problems to have for the Red Sox. But this podcast is not about the Red Sox. I don't care where they play them. They've spent at least $40 million just this year on them, and so it does make them a better team. But they're also out $40 million, where we still have a bunch of money to spend, right, Mark?
Wait, no, we don't spend any money, Craig. And for what it's worth, I wish that we had spent $40 million on some sort of payroll additions. But
I cannot. Yeah, I do agree with that. So again, going in now, the camp has started. Pitchers and catchers are reporting. I kind of feel, in large part, this is the roster we're going with. So has your assessment changed anyway on how the Brewers infield will shake out at this point?
Well, it hasn't changed because we haven't brought in anyone. I mean, that's the problem. I still don't know how this team expects to replace Willy Adames' power. I just don't see it. I keep wanting to see some sort of power addition to this lineup. I thought the Brewers could get creative and even bring in a first baseman and then DH Hoskins. I didn't see that happen. I mean, the Brewers standing pat for the Brewers this offseason is essentially what the strategy was, while unloading contracts like Devin Williams' contract and then losing Willy Adames to free agency to the Giants, while only adding in Nestor Cortez in a utility player, in my opinion. So you add in a fourth starter, maybe a third starter, maybe a fifth starter, depending on how he does. But you add in one guy to your rotation, and you bring in what I view as a utility player, and then a couple of relievers, and yet you lose your all-star closer and your all-star shortstop, who, by the way, hit over 30 home runs last year. Like, I understand that Jackson Chourio is now going to be a year older and is going to, I think put up better numbers than he did last year. And I understand that we are bringing back a core of great, young, talented players, but I am very concerned about the lack of power in this lineup at this point. And I think that they're banking way too much on Christian Yelich returning to form. Without having another injury. I think that they're banking too much on the fact that, Chourio can just by himself replace Adames' power numbers. Like, I think that the Brewers really needed to bring in somebody to add some power to this lineup. And I really don't understand what the offseason strategy was. I think that we're a worse team, today than we were at the end of last season.
Yeah. And there's not very many names out there that have power to add. Again, unfortunately, I don't want to circle back because I'm just really not that interested. But a guy like Paul DeYoung has third base experience and whatnot, and tons of power, but his hit tool is questionable at best, and I just don't really want to go that route. More so than him just taking at bats away from others that are more deserving. Another guy I know that we've had some interest in the last 5-ish years, every offseason, because I think he's been going pretty much year to year, and that's Justin Turner. But again, he's pushing 40. His power has reduced significantly. He's always had a great. If I had a gun to my head to pick one of the two, I'd pick Justin Turner over Young just because of his on base skills and his. And so maybe he's still an option. It wouldn't be to me. He'd make a nice bench bat with some basically some nice depth for the corner infielders, which again, I am counting on a pretty big bounce back from Reese Hoskins. I love the signing of him last year.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, I am too. I liked
it
Hopkins a lot. Yeah,
it didn't work out. I'm looking at the rest of our lineup, like where are we gonna get more power from? I do believe Jackson Trio with a full year will increase his power output. I One of the biggest guys that I see, I look at this and I'm like, please stay healthy, and I think you're gonna have a big breakout with some power, and that would be Garrett Mitchell. I feel that he
yeah,
didn't contribute
agreed.
much to our team at all either the last 2 years, and now I just feel like it's his time to shine, so to speak. And I feel like is
You know,
he
but that being said, Craig, I think that Mitchell did perform really well last year when he did play. He was fun to watch. I really liked him. It was just that he was injured for so much the last 2 seasons that it's hard to know what we've got with him. But the talent is there, and you're right. Garrett Mitchell could be a huge spark for this lineup if he's healthy for a full year.
He did have that big home run in the playoffs, and our only playoff win after Jackson Trio had his 2-run home run, the go-ahead home run in that second wild card game. But no, I just feel like he just needs to get at bats and stay healthy, and I think he could be a huge breakout type player for us this year. And so with that being said, I still think, like I said, we need to add some power at least to our bench. We used to have Gary Sanchez at least to come off the bench, and again, he underperformed too, but. We'll see. So, real quick, switching back, just a random question for you, just as a topic of discussion. What is more likely to happen this year? Bryce Trang as our everyday leadoff hitter, or Bryce Trang as our everyday shortstop, in your opinion?
I don't think either one of those things is terribly likely. Um,
Okay. But the question is, which is
yeah.
more likely?
I guess the leadoff hitter, but I don't think either one's happening. I mean, to me, you don't move a guy that won a Gold Glove, even a Platinum Glove. And literally, the best defensive player in the National League last year was Bryce Terang. And why would you move him? I mean, I don't understand what the thinking is in that, especially when you don't have a young second baseman waiting in the wings right now who's taking his place. You just happen to have other guys that can play that position. So I don't see that. And Terang has got a really good hit tool. I think overall, he made a ton of improvements last year in his game offensively. The glove has always been there. I was really impressed by the ways that he had kind of made some changes and made some adaptations to his offensive game last year, though. And I still don't know that he profiles as a leadoff hitter at all, actually. I think that he's a guy that can surprise you with some of his offensive tools, but he's only going to surprise you if he's in, like, I don't know, way further down the lineup. I'm almost thinking like seventh or eighth, somewhere in there.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting assessment, and I agree with. So my answer to that is I think that he's more the two things he's more likely to become our everyday shortstop. So hear me out real quick. First of all, the leadoff thing. What if you look at traditionally in baseball? Someone that would steal that many bags would be a candidate to hit toward the top of your lineup, and it's not like he's a slouch with the bat or anything either. Um,
No,
but and the only reason I'm even bringing it up is because we used Jackson Churio as our leadoff hitter for most of the second half last year, which he excelled at. But I do think with the, you want to get the righty lefty back and forth in the lineup. So you'd probably want Christian Yelich hitting behind him. I think Christian Yelich works best in the 3 hole. So I think Jackson Trio would really benefit from being in batting second. So again, who would then emerge as our better candidate for a leadoff hitter? I think Sal Frelick hasn't earned that right. He's got some on base skills too, but it almost feels like Trang is one step ahead of him as far as with the bat or whatever. So I think he is a somewhat of a candidate. It's very possible they just stick with Jackson Trio at leadoff going forward, but we'll see. Um, I just don't know how many other leadoff candidates. Maybe Garrett Mitchell, but with his power, I prefer
yeah,
him more toward the middle of the lineup. So we'll see how they construct the lineup. I'm not, I'm not too concerned about that. What I am more concerned, like you said, it does seem crazy to take someone that's won a Gold Glove at second base and a Platinum Glove, like you mentioned, as the best offender in all of baseball. Uh, at any position. But if you look at it traditionally, if you had someone coming up through the minor leagues who is a great defender, what's the most important position on the infield where you'd want to put that person? And it would be shortstop, hands down, over second base. They get more balls are hit there. It's more important in a lot of ways. Bryce Trang was drafted and didn't come up as a shortstop. He's got plenty of experience there. I think he will excel to a Gold Glove level as a shortstop if he were to be moved there. Why I think it's possible and more likely that he gets moved there is because I'm not convinced that Joey Ortiz is the greatest shortstop in the world. I think he's really solid, JJ Hardy-ish, but I think that he profiles fine as a defensive third baseman. And that leaves only, if that were to happen, Caleb, second baseman would open. And then if you look at Caleb Durbin, who just doesn't seem like he's, right as a third baseman, even though he did play there in the Arizona Fall League and he's got some experience. So it's still possible to go that route. I feel like they're going to figure out during spring training here, now that the players have reported, that he profiles best as second baseman. He had great defensive metrics at second base in the minor leagues. I think he fits well there, just profile wise. And even though we've all already talked about this at length, that we really think he was best on a championship caliber team as a great utility infielder to play all the infield positions on the left side of the infield. However, in real, and also the corner outfielders, and I should say that we probably won't be playing him at short even as a backup. But the bottom line is, I think that given what we have here at the start of spring training, I really feel like we're going to give him a starting position to start off the year. And I think it's going to be second base, but we shall see. I don't know that it really matters. But Caleb Durbin, he profiles as a classic overachiever. So even though he profiles utility hitter, I'm giving the benefit of the doubt, and maybe this is just the Brewer fan of me, but I've convinced myself that he's going to be an overachiever at the major league level, and he's going to have a really solid season in his first year as the Milwaukee Brewers.
All right, yeah. So Pat Murphy would agree with you, I think, on him being an overachiever. I want to get back, though, to a few points that you raised. Going back to, kind of looking at Sal Frelick versus Bryce Terang in the leadoff spot. I mean, I understand what you're saying about Frelick's bat not necessarily being there, but he actually has a higher OBP than Terang does. I mean, so he's literally got better on base skills by the numbers than Terang at this point. It's not by much, but Frelick's OBP is only 320 and Terang's is 316. So again, they're very close. They both steal a ton of bases. Frelick was only caught 3 times. He had 18 stolen bases. Terang obviously had more stolen bases, but he also, was running a lot more off. He had 50 stolen bases last year, caught 6 times. So to me, either one could bat there. I just think that, when comparing those two guys, their OBP skills are pretty similar at this point in their careers, at least. So you could argue, though, for sure that Terang has a higher upside, and maybe he is going to, fill in that role at some point. And I do think his bat, I think both their bats are still improving. And I think that Terang is certainly a high upside offensive talent, just that hasn't fully matured yet. But I think that we saw some of those steps last year when he raised his batting average. What was it? 30 points last year. I mean, it was pretty great progress from a second-year player, especially when you consider his, very, very good and now well-recognized defensive skills. So I think that you can have that debate. The shorts, moving Terang to shortstop, it's not like it would be the worst thing in the world. It's not like he couldn't play there. In fact, I think he'd be great there. To me, I think what it really comes down to is seeing a guy who, again, has won a platinum glove at a certain position and wondering why we would want to change up what's working. So that to me is really what it comes down to, especially because some of the other names that you mentioned, I think that you've profiled, again, a couple of utility guys, which is why I thought it was so important to bring in one other guy into the infield mix at this point. And Duran is, I think that he's a talented player. I think that it's going to be really fun to watch him play. I think he's going to steal a lot of bases. But when you've got a guy that can play 4 different positions and doesn't have the pop yet, at least, to play third base, probably, in my opinion, that to me is an issue, especially when you lose Billy Adames from this infield. So I'm trying really hard to keep my Brewers blinders off and be realistic about what we have at this point. And I think we've got like a couple really good younger players who are still developing and a couple utility guys. And I'm kind of looking at what Willie did for us the last couple of years. Again, I wouldn't have paid Willie what he got from the Giants, but we have to be realistic that we lost 30 plus home runs from our lineup. And I don't know, and a ton of leadership, and we didn't make it past the first round last year. And I'm just wondering where we're going to make up for that, and that to me has been the challenge to kind of understand what the Brewers are doing here the last couple of months. And I say that while still cutting Matt Arnold himself and the front office a ton of slack because they've done a great job. So that's kind of where I'm at with things overall.
Yeah, and looking at the free agents that are still out there unsigned, I mean, you would have to think if they're going to bring in a young upside third baseman or something that it'd have to be done via trade.
Yeah.
It
And I was
just
hoping for Alec Bain for what it's worth instead of any of the
yeah,
guys in the free agent market. Like Justin Turner had, I think, 11 home runs last year or something. It's not like we're going to get a huge power influx from him at this point. I've never liked Paul DeYoung. I just don't like him.
yeah,
Um, so, for me, at least, unless you were going to go like huge on a 1 year deal for somebody like a Pete Alonso, put him at first, and get some power that way, and then have Hoskins as your DH or something, which obviously wasn't happening. And I think Alonso wanted to go back to the Mets the whole time. I'm not blaming the Brewers for not signing a free agent. I'm saying that I think we could have been more creative in our approach in terms of bringing in a bat this offseason. Maybe we still will. I don't know, but it's
yeah.
getting late.
If you're correct and we leave Terang at second, I think Joey Ortiz is our shortstop then, and that means third base would be some form of either Durbin, Oliver
Albert
Dunn.
Dunn.
Other people on the internet think Tyler Black's an option there. I don't think he is. I think he's a more DH backup in case Yelich is not healthy type of thing. But
And
so
I predicted Black, Craig, when we talked about this last episode about internal options to play third. I actually predicted Black was going to get the majority of at bats there, just because I do think that they're going to realize that they need some power in this lineup. And his on base skills are good. I don't know where he's at defensively. I think he only played 50 some games at third in the minors last year.
yeah, from
That's my concern.
our interns have given me inside intel that the Brewers brass have already moved on from him as an everyday third baseman because of his lack of defensive or his ability to handle that position defensively. It could be wrong, and this is a new spring. Maybe he's made some strides, but I'm not counting on that. In fact, overall, as far as when it comes to Dunn and Black, I am not expecting. Um, I'm not high on either of those as far as huge contributors for the Milwaukee Brewers in 2025 season. I hope I'm wrong, of course, because they're on the roster. But yeah, so I guess that's my take on that. So if that's the case, that we're going to start Durbin at third base as it looks as of right now, I do feel like maybe bringing in a Justin Turner as bench/insurance for third, it makes a lot of sense. He's also getting up there in an eight. I don't know how great he is defensively at third anymore. He's probably better at first base, but his bat would be nice to have, not necessarily in the lineup every day, but a nice, depth piece or bench bat at this point of his career. With that being said, him and his agent, I'm sure, are still trying to find, are probably trying to find, an everyday at bats for him, even if it's in someone's DH role. So we shall see. So one more
Did you
thing
get that
here on
inside
the.
info about? Did you get that inside info from Tyler about Tyler Black from our interns or from our anonymous source Tom Carter?
Um, Actually, Tom C, as he, I'll say to hide his identity or whatever. Actually, it says that we can just call him anonymous intern if we want, since we like
Hmm.
both those. He said you guys seem to like both those terms a lot. I don't know what that means exactly, um, but he said just use the information, no credit needed. Don't mention me at all. Don't mention anonymous. Don't mention intern. All that stuff. I'm like, all right, Tom, have a nice day. So that's just throwing that
Yeah.
out there. But
Oh,
yeah.
thanks.
So no, that information did come from him. Again, thank you. I like to give credit where credit is due, and that's
Yeah.
from
No, I
Tom
want to
C.
make sure. Hey, Craig, do you think that kind of a crazy thought? Do you think that Brock Wilson has an outside chance to be on this team at some point this year?
I do at some point this year, but it'd be late in the year. I think that he had a kind of
Yeah.
down year in the minor leagues last year. Also, if you had to tell me he was going to be a future everyday player for the Brewers, what position it would be at this point, I'd actually have to say he's probably going to. He profiles better as a first baseman, which kind of.
Mhm.
But I mean, he could still stick at third, but he did have a kind of a down year. But he has shown coming out of college he's got good, tons of power and good on base percentage skills. But he really did have a off year in the minor leagues this year, so he does have to have a nice year with the bat. It's part of his profile, has some red flags. Is like this guy could be a potential bust, you know. So that's something to keep in mind. I've always loved power hitters, but the fact that we're lacking in power hitters is the fact that yeah, that's it's. I would love to see him be part of the team by this time next year, absolutely going into spring training, and I think that's very possibility as either a third or first baseman. So as long as he does his part in the minor leagues this year, but if he does have a huge break on the minor leagues, absolutely, we'd have to consider with our makeup to add him to the roster at some point, even if it's late in the year. So to answer your question, I do
He
predict.
played a. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, no, go.
Well, I was just gonna say he played a full season pretty much at Double A last year. Do you think he starts there again, just because he did had a poor year, at least in terms of batting average? He still posted 17 home runs. You know, not great, not terrible, but in
Yeah, I
so
would say he probably starts a year at Double A, and then after, like, if he has a successful first month or so of the season, they'd probably promote him to Triple A then. It's very, again, I don't, some of these things sometimes come down to like who is ahead and behind him on the depth chart wise. And so, but he could start at Triple A, but most likely Double A is what I'm going to guess. So, um,
yeah.
yeah, so that basically, so are there any other subjects you want to get to today, Vince?
I think that we mentioned in our last show about CC making the Hall of Fame, right? We did touch on that, I believe.
Oh yeah, we did
If
touch on it.
not,
It wasn't official till
well,
later.
it was actually like the day of the official vote. So I think we mentioned that we were very, very sure that it was going to happen, but I don't think we technically acknowledged it yet. So just yeah, Brewers history note: CC Sabathia becomes the ninth Brewers player, I believe, to be inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York. So congrats to CC. Obviously, a short tenure as a Brewer, just one half season basically, but what an incredible tenure that was. That half season was one of the more memorable seasons in Brewers history, in my opinion, and obviously for our show, but not just for us, but for I think the Brewers generally. It goes down as being an incredible half season, an incredibly memorable year, making the playoffs again for the first time since 1982 at that point, and I think it. In terms of baseball history, I think it actually goes down as one of the better trade deadline acquisitions in Major League history. His impact on the team. The only thing that could have been better would have been leading the Brewers to a World Championship, which obviously didn't happen. But just an incredible performance as a Brewer. So I'm always going to think fondly of CC Sabathia and his time in Milwaukee.
Absolutely. And again, as you're well aware, there have been over 1,000 different players that have donned a Brewers uniform now in our 55 years as a franchise. And to be one of only nine to make it to the Hall of Fame is pretty big honor for CC Sabathia. And again, going back to like our kind of heyday of doing the Brooker review, that was like right in the wheelhouse of when we were really excited about the Milwaukee Brewers, and that was probably one of the biggest memory and most memorable seasons, 2008 here as from our Brooker Review team, and that always hold a special place in our heart. And it was all because of CC's incredible year after acquiring him at the trade deadline.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I did just double check. It's nine Brewers have made the Hall of Fame in the team's history, and two of those guys are going to be officially inducted in this year's class, which takes place in Cooperstown in July with Dave Parker and CC Sabathia. So on a weird, just sort of like Brewers procedural note, that does now actually mean that both of those guys are eligible for the Brewers Wall of Honor outside the ballpark. There's a set of criteria that the players have to meet in order to get inducted. So it's not like just a great half season could get you in typically, but once you're a member of the Hall of Fame, and the Brewers saw this with have honored guys like Trevor Hoffman in this way as well. The Brewers now have made these guys eligible for the Wall of Honor. They have not yet announced whether they are going to, in fact, be enshrined or not. But my guess is that we may see CC and Dave Parker maybe around the stadium this year for a day to celebrate their achievement of getting into the Hall of Fame and spending some time in Milwaukee during their now Hall of Fame careers. So at some point in the 2025 season.
Yeah, so Burr fans, if you've ever made it out to the Hall of Fame, definitely recommend. And a great weekend to do it might be the last weekend of July this summer, as you'd get to see the inductions of two former Brewers, CC Sabathia and Dave Parker. So yeah, congratulations to both of them on making the Hall of Fame. And thanks again for listening. All of our Brew Review listeners. Vince, thanks for your time today.
Yeah, thank you, Craig. And just as a quick reminder, give us a follow. Brew Review 1 is our Twitter handle. Send any questions or comments for our show. Brew Review Podcast with an S at gmail.com. I know that Scotty is checking on it. Is Scott on the show today?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Well, I'm sure he's going to check those questions here shortly. But yeah, thanks to you, Craig, and thanks to Scotty and to Chad for all their work for the show here today.
I will, on one little Scott footnote, I will say that I believe that his email retriever puppy named Cooper was born right about the same time as Brewers prospect Cooper Pratt, actually. It's kind of interesting. In my mind, I want to think that Cooper Pratt's mom or parents were a fan of our listener of our show, and they were like, that would be a good name for a kid. So they named Cooper after Scott's email puppy, but that's just in my mind, I think. But anyway.
Well, it's nice to see that bridge, that link between Cecil Cooper, Scott's retriever pup, Coop, the ballpark pup, and then, Cooper Pratt now making his Brewers debut probably at some point, either, probably next year. But that's kind of nice to see that link.
Absolutely. So, all right, pitchers and catchers episode. Very excited. I've got a big grin on my face and can't wait to see some more news coming out of Brewers camp. Lots of baseball ahead of us here in 2025, and super excited about it. So, thanks, Vince, and stay classy, Wisconsin, and go Brewers.
All right, Craig. Thanks. Go Brewers.